So in terms of our organizing, the primary focus has been on education. We have not been able to actually get the National Union to do the research in terms of our pensions and other investments. They've flat out refused to do that. So that's still another fight that we're taking on. But our focus has been on education, and what we've done since August of 2006, our International Solidarity Committee and other rank-and-file activists have basically worked with the leadership of the Ontario division to develop materials, which most of you got. There should be some more in the back, which is a simple educational material that basically looks at why we compare Palestine to South Africa, why it's apartheid, what the Bantustans look like, what the conditions are on the ground, and also points people to ways to boycott. And we've basically been doing, we've trained about 30 members, all rank-and-file members from across the province to do these educationals. We paired more experienced activists with newer activists to do these presentations. And we began with the Ontario Executive Board and moved on to committees, so progressive committees that would invite us, like women's committees and anti-racism committees, etc. And have gone to conferences. Every conference we distribute materials and have a side session at each conference and convention. We've gone to councils, to locals, to union schools. We did this also, we did call-arounds. We basically spent a month going through our union list and calling locals and asking them to give us space at their general members meetings. Even whatever time they'd give us, so like 10, 15 minutes, just to come in and do a presentation with members. And we've gone to spaces basically where most members have only ever heard of Palestine from CNN. I've only ever had that kind of corporate media, information about the situation in Palestine. So it's been really important getting out there to basically counter that kind of mainstream corporate opinions on the situation in Palestine. And while some locals have not invited us to give presentations because of debates within their unions or a lot of pressure from Zionist members, the ones that we have been able to do, we've received a lot of positive feedback from. And partially, I think this is because, for most members, the boycott is really something that people really respond to well, because it seems it's not just a lot of people in our union see international solidarity as a kind of charity thing that the union does. You give money to this union here or there, but actually boycott, divestment, sanctions actually gives people feeling of strength of giving individual members the power to actually do something in their day-to-day. And people respond to that really well, and they actually get frustrated with us because they're just like, well, where's your list? How come they're not fully developed? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to boycott? And so people actually really respond well to that, and also to the apartheid analysis, which I think really changes the discourse from, this kind of civil war somewhere out there that's incomprehensible and too complex for me to ever understand. You see the maps, you see the comparisons with South Africa, and it's very clear. People understand right away this is about racism and colonization, right? So that's been really important. And so our focus has been to basically do this education as widely as possible and build a base amongst rank and file. And this wouldn't have been possible without all the work of the Coalition Against Israeli Apartheid, which has different sections, students, labor, and even high school students, faculty, who work in coalition, who've helped us to develop trainings and to respond to media attacks, etc. And we also have a real solid base of activists, rank-and-file activists in our union to actually do these educationals, which has been great. So I'm just going to go over some of the challenges. So one of the key challenges, obviously, in our unions is the fear of attacks. Many unions are afraid of attacks that the Zionist opposition, right? And they're unwilling to take that on. For more active unions and councils, they often see taking a strong position against Israeli apartheid as something that will damage or put in jeopardy other campaigns that they're working on or other struggles that they have. So this is key. They know and have witnessed very clearly the response we got in the press and from our own members when we took such a strong position. And for others, there's an inability to separate critiques of Israel with anti-Semitism. This has often been a barrier to being invited to give presentations in locals, and Zionist members have made it very clear to their local leadership that a position against Israel is anti-Semitism. And for members who do make this false equation, the apartheid analysis is a really powerful picture that dispels this falsity. And so, which is why we prioritize the education work. And so for us, Zionism only has power in our unions as long as we're silent and let our leadership be silent. The second aspect, second major challenge, I think, is actually the dominance of business unionism in our unions. I don't know how relevant that is here.
Very
yeah. Okay. So, and by business unions, I mean a way of seeing the union as a kind of servicing agent that only bargains and upholds collective agreements, as if we're in some sort of bubble. So that the bargaining table is somehow separated from political economy and global capitalism. So the business union attitude often treats international solidarity as charity and also as something peripheral to the day-to-day work of our union fighting the employer. We face this not just in our international solidarity work, but generally in all the political work that we do. And as activists, while activists and the division in KP work to challenge this, always connecting bargaining to privatization, to other neoliberal policies and practices, the view that the bargaining table is a space of workers and their employers divorced from the political context in which funding and policies are made is prevalent in our unions. And the absurdity of business unionism is clearly shown when we look at the conditions of workers in Palestine and how this ties to struggles of workers here and throughout the world. The situation in Palestinian workers is often described as a case of imprisoned labor. This is because Israel has almost total control over workers' lives. These conditions and the military occupation are supported by, to the benefit of capitalist interests in the region more generally, as people have spoke about here, not just to the Israeli state. And those other interests are complicit and also, prop up and are complicit with Israeli apartheid. These conditions include the issuing of work permits that tie Palestinian workers to their employers, meaning that they often receive far below minimum wage, have no access to health and safety regulations, get no sick pay or vacation pay. That this is only if they can get work, get a permit, and actually get through checkpoints. Israel controls almost every aspect of economic life in the occupied territories, including land, water, resources, and also polices what Palestinians can and cannot grow. This means devastating conditions for farmers, many of whom have been separated from their land by the apartheid wall, who often can't harvest crops because their water is being diverted into Israel. Even the Palestinian unions themselves are subject to Israeli institutions like the history group. As Manuel mentioned, the history group, I'm not even sure if he mentioned this, but Palestinian workers, the history group collects dues actually from Palestinian workers in Israel, and they basically don't represent them, right? And they were taken to court in 1995 and were asked to remit those dues to the PGFTU, and have still not done so. They owe them billions of shekels in union dues for members they don't represent. And for this reason, the PGFTU has actually called for the boycott of the history group.